Featherweights clash at UFC 287 in a battle that has family ties. We have the Mean Machine, Steve Garcia, taking on the Wolverine, Shayilan Nuerdanbieke. And Matt, for Shayilan Nuerdanbieke, his last time out, his iron stomach won him the fight. He took on Darrick Minner. And if you're trying to find the fight over on Fight Pass, I had a hard time trying to find it. I typed in Shayilan, I typed in Nuerdanbieke. They have it as Shah space Yilan versus Darrick Minner. And in that one, Minner went out there, threw the leg kick, and it looked good when he was fighting from the orthodox stance. Then he switches over to southpaw, throws a body kick, recoils in pain, throws another body kick, ends up against the cage. Nuerdanbieke, big elbow into all of the elbows, down in his ground and pound. He picked up a giant win. Darrick Minner's out of the UFC. James Krause is out of the UFC.
Did we learn that much from that performance?
And I do not think that we did. So now Nuerdanbieke gets to come into this matchup on a 3-fight win streak. And I say that there's family ties to open up this video because for Nuerdanbieke, he said in an interview, and this is a weird part, or the part that weirded me out a little bit. So I guess I'll throw up the tweet there from JHK where he says that Meerschaert is his cousin. And it was an interview on Combat Sports and Fanatics View with Lynch where he said it was his younger brother. But either way, there's family ties with Nuerdanbieke and his main training partner, Meerschaert, having fought Steve Garcia. And Meerschaert dropped him with the same right cross twice in the first round. Now, the big difference is Nuerdanbieke throws giant looping hooks all the time with full power from round 1 to round 3. Meerschaert is much taller, upright, and throws a lot of straight shots. So not a lot of similarities there, but definitely a good look for Nuerdanbieke. Training at Killcliff with Li Jingliang, formerly of China Top Team, with Meerschaert. And then the big part for Nuerdanbieke in a matchup like this, he has really good wrestling, and that is the foundation of his skill set.
That's why this fight is so interesting, because to me, Nuerdanbieke could fight like Steve Garcia. He'd win way less fights though. If he wanted to just start throwing crazy reckless combinations, not rely on the power, and I do agree with you, the output might not necessarily be where you want it to be when he's moving forward, but to his credit, when he does land those big shots, they're devastating when he is able to land them. And I think a guy like Steve Garcia, is he going to go out there and win a lot of moments? Yes, he is, but he's going to give you moments that you otherwise would not have been able to get because he leaves so many openings with his own striking style. And you bring it up with Nuerdanbieke. He does have a pretty advanced offensive wrestling game. We have seen that quite a bit. Not even just in the UFC. If you watch a lot of his fights pre-UFC, the wrestling is a big part of his game. So it'll be interesting to see.
TLC wrote a song about the guys that Nuerdanbieke was fighting in China.
No scrubs?
They didn't want no scrubs.
Exactly. That's the nice thing about Nuerdanbieke. I know his record is insane, 39 and 10, and it has changed.
Whoa.
Exactly.
It was 19 and 7 when he fought Sean Soriano, and then his next time out against...
But why would you lie about that? 39 and 10 is way better than 19 and 7.
I don't think it's his fight.
No, I'm just saying, if you're going to have a record, I would much rather have the 39 and 10.
They took some Mrs. Dash and threw some spice on
This is my whole point about Nuerdanbieke. He has very powerful counter shots off the back foot. We've seen that a lot, and he's a very good wrestler, especially when guys are crashing forward into him. He's a good guy at deciphering, okay, when can I shoot for the takedown? When should I match the guy with strikes? Steve Garcia is going to give you the opportunity to do both of those things, and I think that's why the odds are where they are. I know we normally get to that later on in the show, but
I wish we would.
When I had initially looked at this fight, I was kind of surprised at the odds, but after I started doing a little bit more research about it, kind of thinking about both guys' fighting styles, I can't really disagree with them because I do think Garcia is going to accentuate a few of the things Nuerdanbieke does excel at. Like you had mentioned, wrestling is one of those things that Nuerdanbieke might not get the credit for because a lot of guys do think of that big power, but I think that'll be utilized quite a bit in this matchup against Garcia.
Nuerdanbieke fought 13 times in 2016. He fought 18 times in 2017. Was he sitting on a porch just ripping darts waiting for the next fight?
Pretty much, just wherever you are, I'll be there.
So I had it written down in my notes. I had chest, low hands when striking, power over volume, and 2 straight Krause corners in his last 2 fights. TJ Brown and Darrick Minner doesn't get that opportunity in this one. Mean Machine is a guy that, when he was a teenager, fought out of a satellite camp or started training out of a satellite camp of Jackson's. He's been a longtime Jackson Wink guy. And if you break down his record, Garcia was 5-2 in Bellator, 2-2 in the UFC, and he main evented LFA 80, and that was what got him into the UFC. Because for Garcia, you go down through it, has he fought wrestlers and beaten them? Yeah. Has he fought better wrestlers than Shayilan and beaten them? Yeah, he's beaten Ronnie Lawrence and Sean Bunch. And if you know Daniel Cormier, he likes Sean Bunch, and so do I. So those are 2 really powerful, impactful wins for me that Garcia has coming into a matchup like this. And then if you do the deep dive on the tape of Garcia, I wasn't necessarily sold on him when he came in and fought Luis Pena. And in that fight, yes, did Pena get a lot of takedowns? No, it was officially credited as 0 of 1 on takedown attempts. But where the positions found themselves, Pena had a ton of control time on the back of Steve Garcia. Charlie Ontiveros dropped Garcia twice, and then in the second round, Garcia rallied back.
Garcia got that dog in him. You know, you can't say he doesn't.
Mahashata dropped him twice with the same shot. And then when Garcia took on Chase Hooper, I spent the whole video saying, Steve Garcia is probably going to win this fight.
Didn't we both have him? Yeah.
Only at the end to go, nah, but I like Chase Hooper, the grappling. I always worry about it when Garcia's taking on these types of guys. And Garcia in that matchup, first knockdown was a left hook. He was credited with 2 knockdowns. I counted 3.
He looked like the greatest fighter of all time.
Second one was a straight left, and those were both inside a minute. And then the third one, it was left hook and then like a slapping left that just kind of dropped Chase Hooper. So for Garcia, it's the stance switches, the crouching. Now, he's not like Rob Font, because Rob Font tucks his chin.
I like the praying mantis thing you're doing.
Rob Font tucks his chin and then tosses his jab out there and then mixes in his 1-2 and an uppercut. Steve Garcia just kind of tucks his chin in and throws a lot of power.
And eats a lot of those shots, though.
But when you look at a matchup like this, both these guys are hittable. Shayilan holds his hands low and throws looping shots. Garcia throws the quicker, straighter shots. So for those reasons...
It's a fun fight, though. I think we both agree on that. Like, for being the second fight on this card, this is going to be a really fun one, I think.
It is. It's a really tough one to try and offer you up and pick on as well, because for me, I look at it as Nuerdanbieke has the X factor of the wrestling, but Garcia's beaten wrestlers and has decent takedown defense, and the biggest component of this fight. Has Shayilan fought at lightweight? Yes. Has Steve Garcia fought at lightweight? Yes. Has Steve Garcia fought at bantamweight? Somehow. But when I look at this fight, I assume in my mind's eye, the guy that has the big height and reach advantage is also physically gifted and larger. So when you look at the matchup, Matt, Shayilan is favored to get the win. We have a look at the Topology votes. Surprise to us there to you. I'm going to say over under 75% for the Wolverine.
I think they'll be over.
I think they're going to be over there. Over 1,626 total votes, 87% Nuerdanbieke, 52% by decision, 38% by knockout. For the 13% that have the mean machine, 47% by decision, 41% by knockout. Who have you got?
For Steve Garcia, I think that chaos can give him a little bit of success.
All day.
It reminds me of something Michael Chandler said about Justin Gaethje way back when he first entered the UFC, and he said, Gaethje doesn't have to fight like that. Like, he only does it because he doesn't have the other parts of his game to fall back on, so that's why he's the crazy man. Now, to Gaethje's credit, I think we saw in the fight against Fiziev, he has started to evolve some of those skills, but Gaethje is a guy who he brawls because there's kind of a lack of that plan B. And I know Gaethje's not the best example because as his UFC career has continued, he has been able to start to flesh out some of those skills, but for Garcia, I kind of said to open this up, Nuerdanbieke could fight like Steve Garcia if he wanted to. He kind of does with the striking. The thing is, he's a little bit more put together with his striking. He's not going to leave the openings because the volume's not there with the hooks, and I think he will be able to shoot in for the takedown because Garcia's a guy who is not afraid to move forward in his fight.
So I like the fight that Nuerdanbieke had against TJ Brown, oddly enough, because in that matchup, if you do consider, was it a really close fight? Sure it was, and there were definitely some people that thought Brown had won it, but for Nuerdanbieke to go out there and grapple for large sequences, that did impress me. In the first round of that matchup, he was able to go out there, throw a right hook, and drop TJ Brown. That was nice to see. And then, of course, his last fight, chalk it up to whatever the hell happened when he took on Derek Minner. But when you look at it for Nuerdanbieke, I go all the way back to a fight outside of the UFC that scares me in a matchup like this. It was his fight against Rong Zhu, where his hands dropped, Rong Zhu right straight knocks him out. And that really is a tricky one against a guy like Steve Garcia. So for part and parcel, I prefer Nuerdanbieke's game in the matchup. I'm going with Nuerdanbieke. We both agree on the pick in this one. But this is a volatile matchup if I've ever seen one. And Steve Garcia has definitely come through in spots like this in the past. So it really is a tricky one for the Fight Night Picks crew. Let us know down below in the comment section who you have. A big time matchup for middleweight glory in the main event. Alex Pereira making the first title defense against familiar foe Israel Adesanya. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.